Jeff T says, do you have any stories or memories of Rocky Johnson coming into the Memphis territory in 1976 to play off the Muhammad Ali versus Antonio Inoki boxer versus wrestler match? Also, we were around in the late 80s when Rocky Johnson returned for his last significant run in the business. This is in Memphis, I believe.
No, the only time I was in Memphis was those two times he mentioned. I was not in Memphis. I do remember him in the probably 76, 77, 75 era when he came in. But that's when the business was still in pretty good shape. And I'm sure they could have afforded him a guarantee that no matter what it drew, he was going to make the same money. But his last two times in there, he was older, heavier, and he didn't have the same sting as the Rocky Johnson in his prime. So I don't remember him the last two times that he mentioned. I do remember him the first couple of times. The first time I remember when he was riding with me one time, and he had a cigar. And in my car, it had like a cloth. What's that thing over your head, the covering of the ceiling? And he lit it or something, and he went up and burned a big hole about that big in my ceiling. And he said, "Oh, I'll pay for it. I'll pay for it." Guess what? He never paid for it. So when I traded the car in a couple of years later, it still had that hole right in the roof. I call it the Rocky hole.
Did Rocky have a reputation of having many illegitimate children even back in the 70s? Because he seems to have dozens.
No, he didn't. I didn't know anything about him. Where I lived with Rocky was at a Days Inn hotel, motel that had monthly rates. And that's because you didn't have to sign a lease and you could leave at any time. You just paid weekly. And I remember The Rock, when he was about 3 years old, I remember him running up and down the hallway outside. And I'd look out there and he'd look at me and he'd see me and he'd run back down there. But that, and what was that question again?
Oh, just Rocky's reputation for seemingly having children everywhere.
Oh yeah, about the kids. No, I didn't even think he had any kind of relations with any women at all. Never saw him with another woman other than his wife. So I read that article about him where all of them were claiming that he was their dad, but I never heard of it to then. And it never crossed my mind, did he have any other kids? There was no reason for me to think of that. But then it came out, Rocky Johnson is my dad. Well, he's my dad too, and he's my dad. And judging from the number of mothers had, Rocky was quite active.
With Rocky, I'm presuming, so this is in 76, I think, when he was the boxer versus wrestler thing with Jerry Lawler. Do you remember that being a particularly big draw at the time?
I guess it was. Lawler was hot. And I don't know if they sold it out, but they had a good house. I remember that.